Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I just watched a TV talk interview between James Whale and Dr. Sheikh Ramsey, and I thought that it would be appropriate for me to comment because they were touching on some really important issues. I've just done a cheeky 5K on a treadmill in the kitchen, so I just wanted to encourage everybody to get your running shoes on, buy some dumbbells, lift some weights. That's for all the mandem out there. For women, it's the same gig. Stay happy, stay healthy. It's really important if you want to be a strong leader of your family and community. You need to be healthy in the mind and healthy in the body. It all comes together. It's one holistic whole being, people. But I want to get right to the crack. Is Islam being discussed on Talk TV again? James Whale, my opinion of him has skyrocketed. Not only with this interview, but I was also aware that I'm not sure if he has terminal cancer or not, but even today at work, I come across one lady who was talking about her husband with terminal cancer. Another fellow had kidney cancer, just had his kidney out, is waiting for the report tomorrow to see if cancer has spread. King Charles has cancer. James Whale has cancer. Cancer's in the in the area up in here. So yeah, my best wishes go out to all these people who are clearly dealing with a tribulation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. So the first thing that he speaks about, they're talking about the anti-Semitic issues within the Labour Party at the moment. I don't know too much about it, but really what I'm interested in is obviously England and Islam, hence being the Anglo-Islamic gentleman. The first thing that the Sheikh Ramsey focuses on is forgiveness and mercy, which is obviously the foundation of the Abrahamic religions. He's talking about the Jewish people forgiving the mistake, and now the Labour politicians are just outright shouting, we made a mistake, kind of remarks that were obviously stupid, but backtracking. So again, that thing, or especially certainly within Islam, that you need to think the best of people. If people make mistakes, the best thing is to forgive them. Allah is obviously Rahman, Rahim, most merciful, most compassionate. So what again, I'm just relaying what this guy's saying. A fantastic interview. Big up James Whale, big up Dr. Sheikh Ramsey. I think that one thing that's important when we think about forgiveness and mercy, we can look at our own lives, family, parents, siblings, children, spouses, friends, work colleagues, and can we actually look and reflect in all genuinity, if that's even a word, with a genuine, naked look in the mirror about the state of our own heart, and maybe breaking down those barriers, taking a big deep breath, hugging it out, and building bridges. That's really what I think this is all about, whether it's actually like direct relationships in our own lives, the resentment, the hate, the fear, the confusion, the misunderstanding, versus the love, the peace, the forgiveness, the mercy, the softness, the calmness, the floating, rather than drowning, which is what this hate is, man. We're drowning in hate up in here. So another thing that Dr. Sheikh Ramsey says, I really like him. I mean, his character, his demeanor is very rapid, and hopefully what he's saying is coming across. The words are deeper than maybe just his personality and the way he's getting them across. But work on integration, cohesion, and the eradication of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and that's exactly what this channel's about, people. It seems so simple to say, but there's so much misunderstanding out there. So work together and not to fear one another. This is the whole point. And then James Whale has a pretty reasonable sort of remark, which is, kind of reality versus the ideal. The ideal, we're talking about peace and forgiveness and mercy and love. And he's saying, well, hold on a sec. What is this about? What I remember my own father saying this growing up, the cutting off of the hands of the Shariah, the whipping, the violence. I mean, he literally puts this question forward. Why does it seem, well, what he says actually is, why is there so much violence in Islam? Or then he corrects himself, he says, why does there seem to be so much violence within Islam? And the Sheikh replied with literally the bang on correct situation. It's that if you look at Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, and secular atheists, the whole thing is the human being. And this is what he really focuses on. It's just like, look, what's happening? Hamas, Israel, humans killing humans. Russia, Ukraine, humans killing humans. Like, what's happening, Putin isn't Muslim. There's a lot of violence going on there. You get me? Like, you know, all over the shop, there's violence. So the reason why there's so much violence perceived in Islam is because there's so much violence in the human race, and we've been absolutely betrayed by the devil. And he does raise that, and James Wells says the devil's a fairy tale. But I think that, well, in Islam, one of the greatest tricks of the shaitan would be to make you think that he doesn't exist, so then he can infiltrate the situation. But I often think the devil, you can think of it as all those things we spoke about earlier: anger, greed, misunderstanding, confusion, um, resentment, like harsh, tense feeling, and letting that overcome you. I mean, you know what they say, like, get 10 drinks down and the devil comes out. The devil is this like power that can overcome you and not be the most becoming thing. It's this kind of, it, even if people don't understand or believe in the supernatural, and accept the existence of angels and jinns and the devil and miracles, like, I think it's still quite powerful to grasp the concept metaphorically still. And I think also calling this stuff fairy tale, eh, it shows ignorance to me, and it's also kind of a dig. And people which are obviously entitled to their opinion. So the main push of the interview is Sheikh Ramsey, Dr. Sheikh Ramsey, pushing peace, pushing togetherness. And when he mentions Hamas, Israel, who I think that little old me, insignificant gentleman up in here, I think it's pretty reasonable to condemn Hamas, and call them a terrorist organization. I think that the reason why people fear, at least like on the media and stuff, Muslims, why they don't want to maybe outright answer the question, and this is creating actually like more division, rather than cohesion, obviously, because making people think like you're like basically pro-terrorist here. Like, why can you not just condemn an act of atrocity like killing innocent people, which is directly against the like God's commandments? Is directly against the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, do not cut down trees in war, do not kill babies and women in war. Like, there's rules of engagement, and those were very clearly broken by Hamas on October 7th. So I don't think it's unreasonable to call them a terrorist organization, because they imposed and inflicted terror upon innocent people, which is completely, disgusting. I think that the reason why the Muslim speakers on the media and such are kind of cautious to do that is because they don't want to concede the ground in the historical context of the conflict. So what I think is important to mention is, like, number one, the conflict, although the rights to the lands and stuff, it has a kind of a religious claim. Like, Israel is ultimately, ironically, a secular state, and the conflict is a political conflict. It's a conflict over land. Like, it's a war that happens to be between two religious groups, but in many ways goes so much, it just slices through religion. And like the Sheikh Ramsey says, it's just like any other war, humans killing humans. And yes, there's a history of war between religions. That's the classic thing, like, religion causes all the war. Like, if there was no religion, there would be no war. But it's like, at the same time, guys, we should really be looking at some pretty fair comparison and examples of European infighting throughout, the last couple thousand years, again, over land grabs, over power, struggles, land. You go to China, Mao, Russia, Stalin, Nazi Hitler. Like you just look like, I don't know, like even America, like all the Aboriginal people, the original people of the lands when the Europeans went there. Like just war happens like for so much deeper reasons than like just Islam and Christianity, like based on the doctrine of the faith. Like it's not really an intellectual position to take. So that being said, admitting Hamas are a terrorist organization, I actually think is a potentially pretty reasonable step to actually bring together this cohesion that's being spoken about between Muslims and non-Muslims, sort of English people of the media and Muslims, so they don't be taken as just putting them in the same category, like kind of quote unquote normal, practicing, peaceful Muslims of England being seen as like pro-terrorists, like Hamas sympathizers. I think that we can quite easily say that what they did was an act of terror, but at the same time, we should look at the whole Zionist movement, Palestine, Israel, the creation of the state. Let's look at the context of literally the last whatever it is 80 odd years, and see that both sides haven't really represented themselves very well, to say the least. And yeah, it's almost an analogy would be could be used of although it's never right. Like if a dog bites a child, right, the dog's probably going to be put down. You get it, but imagine if that dog was a dog in the corner, like it's got no option, like it's gonna come and bite you because it is scared, it's amped up, there's not really much option, like that, you know. So I think that's kind of where people are coming from. Like it was an antagonized, even though what was done was not within the like the legislation of war within Islam, like innocent people, citizens, children, women, disgusting. So it's not to condone that, but the nature of going beyond the border, the attack itself, comes from a large historical context of being kind of like barricaded in and feeling kind of like attacked, but very subtly. A great example would be like maybe with family and friends, people have this thing of like, if somebody makes like a comment, they might patronize you, they might like sort of like belittle you, emasculate you. They might say something that's almost like you felt it, but you're like, it's not big enough a thing to like call out in front of everybody. Oh, I didn't like, oh, like, I'm making such a big deal sort of thing. Calm down, da da da. And so you just sometimes like absorb a bit of this, like a little bit, and it's that kind of totalitarian tiptoe. Land can be taken, policies can be passed, things can happen step by step. And that can then result in people feeling paralyzed and not knowing what to do. It's a really tricky situation. I feel kind of blessed, fortunate that I see the conflict from like, I'm not emotionally involved in this conflict. I'm not like, yes, I'm a practicing Muslim, I've embraced Islam, but I see Jewish people as brothers. At this point, I mean, look, the state of Israel has already been created. It's too late now. Like, although I think that, to be honest, it was pretty. I don't accept the kind of Old Testament biblical claim to the land. Like the Jewish people needed somewhere to live. Although that they were absolutely, although persecuted, of course, in the past, many minorities have been persecuted, but they're pretty well integrated into society. At the end of the day, I'm sure in the 20th century, a lot of people would have seen themselves as English or German, or they would have seen themselves as identifying with the nationality of where they were, obviously as well as Jewish. But the whole thing of needing a land and then taking the land from somebody else seems like almost a contradiction in terms kind of thing. So even though I think it's reasonable to debate like the very land claim itself, the fact that that's like, say, I believe it's 1948, right? The state of Israel became. So it's like, it's a long time. And so I think now, based on current situation, like they've got a strong claim to the land, but based on the 20th century setup and all the people that are there, I'm no politician, historian. I just would love nothing more than peace in the land, something reasonable, something fair, which I'm sure is not going to be easy. But the main thing is that the Sheikh, Dr. Sheikh Ramsey says is the very tension and division between Muslims and Jews because of this conflict thousands of miles away is completely against the very foundation of our faiths, which is built upon um, love, forgiveness, mercy, communion, like come together, work together. Muslims and Jews have way more in common than often secular people. So a real great shame, but I thought that was really powerful that the brother condemned Hamas and said they're a terrorist organization. It seems pretty reasonable to say that. So why create further division, especially when you can... I think the problem is, and we'll get onto this in one moment, because when you ask yes or no questions and there's these sound bites and the whole social media situation of the modern world, there's a big problem there. Because it obviously these situations, political power struggles, and certainly religious doctrine and sociology and how we integrate in society and all of these, like, it takes a bit of discussing. Hence why I can ramble on for hours at end, because it's a lot to unpack. So yeah, what I want to conclude with Hamas Israel is what we've got there is a political situation, not a religious situation anyway. So let's not be too quick to jump on like Islam promotes violence, that's why Hamas is justifying what they're doing. And it's not as simple as that, guys. Islam is a religion of peace. Humans killing humans, that's what's happening. That's the greatest shame. And yes, I would agree with the Sheikh that clearly it stinks of the shaitan. This is devilish. The devil wants everything opposite to what is best for us. Brotherhood, sisterhood, families being together. When families break apart, when you don't have forgiveness, when you have resentment, resentment's of the devil, forgiveness is of the Lord, the true Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Goodness is from God, badness is the devil is the instigator of the badness, but we choose ultimately to engage with it. There is enough food, as he says. I love this. There's enough food, enough kindness, enough brotherhood, enough land for everybody. So keep together and love each other. Like that is beautiful. That's Islam. Those are the ideals. I'm going to sort of wrap up approximately with this. The question that our man James Whale asks at the end, and really pushes for a yes or no answer, but again, needs a bit more unpacking, is Sharia law more important than the law of the land, that being the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Well, a yes or no. Ultimately, what he's pushing you into, which then creates the division and the fear, is the reality that obviously, yes, for a God-fearing, God-conscious person who their whole life is wrapped around their connection with God and peace and prayer and meditation and dhikr, remembrance, and reading the Quran and learning and seeking knowledge all about the supernatural and the spiritual world, and what's more important, this life or the next. This life is a preparation for the next. Obviously, God's law is going to be more important than man-made law, obviously. But when the question is asked, is Sharia law more important than the law of the land, which is Britain, and you say yes, then now you're going to be blasted. I don't know what the right word is. You're going to be absolutely outcasted. You're going to be, do you know what I mean? Like you're being made, it's ostracizing. You're going to be taken seriously because you're one of them classic people. You believe in Sharia law. We don't want that in Britain. We want to keep all of our things secular and above board. And you're these kind of barbaric, desert dwelling people who are, going to come and ruin our perfect secular world. But the issue is, number one, as I've mentioned before, Sharia, part of the very vast, relative, flexible nature of Sharia is to abide by the law of the land you're in, if it is not a Sharia, if the Sharia is not applicable in that land. So for Muslims living in England, like me, like you brothers and sisters, a Muslim has to live by the law of the land. And so the question is kind of like an inception. Is Sharia law more important than the law of the land? Well, Sharia law says that you have to follow the law of the land that you live in, only up until the point where it contradicts with Sharia law. So, and the other thing is, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that Sharia law is like saying law. Like Sharia basically means law. So again, it's already a confused perception of what the Sharia law is. People need to honestly just read some books around the subject and not just listen to TikTok videos and live in fear. So that'd be the first thing. So only when something becomes obligatory, like you have to do X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z are contrary to God's law. So, for example, if religious, now this is the beautiful thing about this country, we have the freedom to assemble, the freedom to speech, the freedom to religious practice. But if that was taken away from us, we would still practice our religion. You know, if you weren't allowed, you know, some kind of 1984 situation, you're not allowed to pray, we would still pray. You get me? Simple kind of stuff. And so, I mean, and the stuff that, this is what I think people fear, is that like, bring the Sharia law here and we're not going to be able to do what we want to do. It's like, nah, like as a Muslim living in this country, I'm not like, and I'd really be surprised, and I'd love to speak to these people to set them straight. Like, if Muslim people in this land are not accepting the law of the land and are pushing for like the prohibition of alcohol and pork or whatever, right? Like whatever's for example, even the prohibition, and he gets onto this at the very end about same-sex relations, like to be like protesting to outlaw that is kind of not our position. That's not what we are supposed to, how we're supposed to act in society. We are supposed to be examples of the religion and going out aggressive, shutting things down, like throwing our toys out the pram because the law of the land that is ultimately not a Muslim land is not following like the Islamic principles, is really messed up, and this is again, I feel is really a product of all this wokey new age agenda stuff seeping in to the new generation and potentially the Muslims, or the so-called Muslims, who are part of that kind of amalgamation. So yeah, I mean, we can get into that a bit more, but the Sharia law and the law of the land, actually, maybe people don't like this, but this is the truth as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, actually coexist, because I live under the Sharia by choice. I voluntarily live under Sharia. I also am obliged to, under the Sharia, to follow the law of the land, which is my country, Great Britain. So I don't really see the issue. Anything that is optional, that is legal, but not obligatory, that contradicts the Sharia, I don't participate in. But if people do want to do that, that's between them and themselves. So, khalas, as they say, finished, done. What more is there to say? I think that's a relatively decent explanation that maybe will calm some nerves. What would you do? He ends here with, what would you do if one of your children, he said, do you have any children? And the Sheikh said 5, mashallah, Allah Mubarak. You know, God has willed it. May Allah bless him and his family. It would be pretty cool to have 5 children, I say. What would you do if one of your children wanted to marry somebody of the same sex? Brilliant response straight away from the Sheikh. God bless him. Or God bless her. Like, at the end of the day, he makes a good point that in this country, and then straight away James Well went to throw it about well, or in other countries, in other Muslim countries. And one thing he did say that he's like, well, why are we talking about those countries? We're talking about this country. I'm British. I live in England. We're talking about, and English Muslim relations here, and how we can have integration into this society. Like, it's that whole thing. Like, before you start pointing the finger at like some global leader, I don't know, Putin, Trump, or like King Jong Un or whatever his name is, and President Xi and whatever, all this stuff around the world. It's like you're looking at that some macro situation. It's like, what do you need to do before you look at the globe? You need to look at your country. Before you look at your country, you need to look at your community, your region, your parish, your district, your town, your village. And before you look at that, you need to look at your family, extended family, relations, and positivity. In that, I'm talking your cousins and that, your uncles and aunties, your grandparents, whatever. And before you do that, you should do your immediate family, your wife, your husband, your spouse, your children, etc. And then before you do that, you need to just sort yourself out. You need to focus on yourself. So that's like number one thing, is you need to look in the mirror and start benefiting yourself. That's why I mentioned at the start of the video. Get running, get lifting weights, get rid of a load of terrible food, like sort your habits out, like get your life on track, which Islam, alhamdulillah, helps with. Drops all of the poison and evil of society. Don't waste your money gambling. Don't waste your money on drugs and alcohol. Don't waste your money on just like caring what other people think and being boisterous and flamboyant and showing off. Like, no, like save your money for you and your family and your future. Give to charity to create barakah, blessing in all of your endeavors. Save your money, get ripped, get fit, get strong, get happy, get positive, and that's going to be a ripple on your immediate family, on your extended family, on your community, and inshallah, when we all do that, on the globe at large. So God bless him or her. Yes, if they want to do that ultimately in this country where I live, which is what I'm going to talk about, because I don't live in Iran or Afghanistan. That they don't represent. What I'm saying is that they're corrupt. I don't know. I don't actually know a lot about Afghanistan or Iran, but what I'm saying is that what's associated with Islam in regards to violence and corruption comes from corrupt political leaders and nations that don't represent Islam. In the same way that, Hitler doesn't represent all Germans. Putin and Stalin don't represent all Russians. Not every person that leads every country isn't the embodiment, isn't the perfection of like the majority of that group they serve. So we need to make some distinctions up in here. So obviously, yes, people have, alhamdulillah, individual autonomy and human rights. And so if your child wants to marry somebody of the same sex, like, you can't disowning them, abusing them. What kind of parent are you? This is extremism. This is not Islam. You should be there to support that person, to talk with that person. You have got the right to explain your case. This is what I would be thinking before. That's like the end situation. I'd be thinking, my son, my daughter, I'd be wanting them to talk to me about if they was getting some feelings in that. Talk to me then, and let's have a conversation. Getting married to somebody of the same sex feels like very many years down the line, from those original feelings. So I'd be wanting an open, communicative, loving, warm, embracing environment to discuss loads of different topics. Obviously, certainly sexual relations being one. I think that's an important role that parents play with children as they grow up. You grow up, growing pains, new situations, how to find an identity as an adult. Of course, parents going to be, helping the child with that. And if ultimately that was what they decided, you have to respect what people choose, although you can still disagree with their choice. And so it's about finding a balance. I would obviously be upset if, me coming into the faith of Islam and having that as like the foundation, the bedrock of my family, for my child to exit it would be really interesting, would be a really interesting challenge, a real interesting tribulation. But inshallah, if well, say if, when all trials and tribulations in the future come, I hope that I'm going to be able to handle them with harmony and grace, to best support my family in every which way. So, yeah, this is me done. Appreciate your time. To all the Muslims out there, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To all the non-Muslims, peace and love and blessings. We're all human at the end of the day. Remember, big up your good selves.